It was the first day of school after the summer break. Biology class was over. As usual, I went to the cafeteria, maneuvering through the noisy crowd. After deciding what I wanted for lunch, I looked for Cynthia, my best friend. The girl had just entered the dining room, and when she saw me, she headed in my direction. I knew right away that something was wrong. Cynthia was always friendly and welcoming, but that day, her face was black as a cloud. "What's the matter?" I inquired. Instead of answering, Cynthia knocked the tray out of my hands. Coke, jam, and lettuce ended up on my brand new white blouse. All that mess slowly dripped down my face and hands. I stood there like a pole. I couldn't understand what had happened, and I couldn't even get the simple words out of my mouth, like, "What are you doing?" I just stood there with my food on my clothes and looked at my friend. "Next time, keep your mouth shut." Cynthia snarled and walked away, flipping her hair defiantly. Everyone looked at me like I was a scarecrow. I did look like one at that moment. "Hi, my name is Rebecca, and just one bad joke of mine ruined my friendship with my best friend. Since that day, Cynthia and I haven't gotten along, to say the least. She wouldn't return my calls, she blacklisted me on every social networking site, and every time I tried to talk to her, ended with her plugging her ears and walking away. I could not find a reasonable explanation for Cynthia's behavior. Did I say something wrong? Did I say something stupid about Tom or about her? As it turned out, my guess was right. I found it out from my classmate Brittany. When we were in the gym, she casually asked, "Do you remember how you told me that Cynthia was dating two guys at the same time?" Did I say that? I couldn't remember. Yes, on summer vacation. Well, it turns out that Tom had dumped her. And then I remembered. But I said it as a joke. She and Phil weren't even dating. He was her fitness trainer. Oops. Brittany giggled and ran to the playing field. I could see where the rumors were coming from. I should have known right away that Brittany wouldn't be able to tell the difference between real fact and sarcasm. She also told half of the school, and of course, the thread led to me. Cynthia had been in love with Tom since elementary school. They had been inseparable ever since, and now he dumped her, thinking she's seeing someone else. And it's all my fault. I'm such an idiot. But how am I going to tell Cynthia about this? I had to find a way to talk to her. The next day, I walked up to her in the school hallway as she was coming out of her art class. "Cynthia," I said, stepping a little closer. "It's a misunderstanding. I didn't mean to." "Oh, so it's you," she said dismissively. There was a trio from the cool club standing next to her. "Can we talk in private?" "About what? That you got a rhinoplasty?" The trio laughed, and other students came up to us. "I asked you not to tell anyone." "I got my nose bridge fixed over the summer, but I didn't want everyone to know about it. I only told Cynthia. You told everyone all that nonsense about me cheating on Tom, didn't you?" "Let's talk alone, without this crowd." I wanted to take her hand, but Cynthia pushed me on the shoulder and I fell to the floor. Everyone started laughing, like I was dressed up as a clown and doing stupid tricks. "We have nothing more to talk about." Cynthia turned and walked away with her new friends. What an idiot. I almost blurted out. Okay, I was stupid, but that's no reason to behave that way. I got up from the floor and went to class. During class, a crumpled piece of paper flew into my head. I reluctantly picked it up and unwrapped it. On the sheet of paper was a drawing of a huge nose with tiny feet. I heard quiet laughter behind me. That's why I did not tell anyone about the operation. As the main rule of school says, any fact from your life can and will be used against you. That's why it's better to keep everything a secret. Actually, when you think about it, it's not my fault Brittany doesn't understand jokes. If Cynthia should be mad at anybody, it should be her. What does it have to do with me? But the story doesn't end there. You remember that Cynthia is my best friend, right? Over the years of friendship, she has collected a huge amount of dirt on me. I never thought in my life that she would use it. It was too mean, but she must have been really mad at me to post those pictures. There was nothing wrong with them. We were just jokingly dressing up in different costumes. But don't you remember the school rule? No one appreciated my Sailor Moon and Abraham Lincoln cosplay. The pictures went viral in no time. As if the drawings with the huge nose weren't enough, now everyone would say to me, "Mr. President, how are you?" and things like that. I took Cynthia's prank as a declaration of war. I apologized to her. I admitted my guilt, but she wouldn't listen. I could now retaliate against her antics. And so began the civil war between Cynthia and I. It wasn't as epic as the Marvel movies, but it did show our most hideous character traits. After the breakup with Tom, Cynthia changed a lot. She became a part of the fashion club. The club consisted of 3 of the most arrogant girls the world had ever seen: Sandy, Tiffany, and Stacy. Cynthia and I often laughed about how seriously these girls take fashion and despise anyone who doesn't mix colors well in their outfits. Why did Cynthia decide to join this devilish trio? I couldn't figure it out. But now she had accomplices, and all the power of the fashion club came crashing down on my head. For example, they chose me as the most tastelessly dressed girl in school for their own fashion catalog. They also posted pictures of me all over the school and demanded that no one come near me. Anyone who came near me risked being a loser. They also started a rumor that I was bulimic, so I was called in to see the school counselor. It took me an hour to convince him that it wasn't true. One day, I ran into Cynthia in the cafeteria. I said to her, "Don't you think it's too much?" I said to her, "That's what they do to traitors." She was so nasty at that moment. I had no choice but do something really bad to a former friend. To be honest, I am still ashamed of what I did. I remember that Cynthia's only weakness was Tom. Tom, ever since they broke up, hasn't been himself, walking around with a sad face, and he hardly spoke to anyone. I think he took the whole Cynthia thing a lot more seriously than she did, because Cynthia had me, the object of her constant hatred, and Tom had only Cynthia, who he loved and hated at the same time. Instead of solving Tom and Cynthia's problem, I decided to make it worse. Tom and I never really talked to each other. In his and Cynthia's relationship, I was the fifth wheel. So when she would suggest, "Come to the movies with us," or "There's a deer in the park chewing carrots, let's go see it," I tactfully declined, usually saying that I didn't feel well. I suppose Cynthia was beginning to think that I was terminally ill, considering how many times I complained about my health when offered another ride on the Ferris wheel. Oh, come on, it's definitely meant for 2. What would we do, take turns riding it with Tom? But now, Tom and I had one thing in common: Cynthia. So we started hanging out more often. We sat together in the cafeteria, we went to the library to study. Tom was always complaining I shouldn't have said those awful things to her. Maybe I should write her. What do you think? At such moments, tiny copies of me would appear on my shoulders. One was in a white robe with a halo over her head. She advised me to say, "Yes, of course, she still loves you." But then a devilish woman in a revealing red suit intervened and made me say otherwise. "Don't you dare! Remember what she did to you!" The devil inside me always won. Tom reluctantly agreed and said, "At least you're around." "You are so evil." The devil woman smiled contentedly on my shoulder. But I didn't start this war. Except technically, the problem was that Brittany didn't understand sarcasm. Maybe I should have carried around a sign that said sarcasm and held it up every time to make sure everyone got it right. One day at recess, Tom and I were approached by Cynthia. "Are you two up to something?" I wanted to reply, "None of your business," but Tom intervened and said something that stunned both me and Cynthia. "Actually, Rebecca and I are dating now." And just for extra effect, he put his arm around my waist. I admit, it felt good, but it was also very awkward. I thought I'd just make Cynthia jealous and not go all in on this, but I guess everything was now happening against my will. Cynthia blushed. The veins in her forehead swelled up, ready to burst. But instead of yelling at me, she cried and ran away. I rejoiced, but not because I had brought my best friend to tears. It was because I really believed that this would be the end of it. Cynthia would surrender, and I would finally tell Tom the truth. But that's not what happened. Tom and I never said a word about that scene in the cafeteria. It was clear enough that he still liked Cynthia very much, and I was just a tool to sting her for a betrayal that hadn't happened. While my strange relationship with Tom continued, Cynthia was plotting her revenge. The final part. The plan was so simple and elegant, I was stunned. Cynthia simply told my parents that I'd spread the rumor about her non-existent affair. In her story, I had an ulterior motive. I lied to steal Tom from her. She told them about that scene in the cafeteria too. I had a long and very unpleasant conversation with my parents. They were not happy with my behavior. I felt like a little child being punished for eating too much candy. Then my parents called Cynthia's parents, and we apologized to each other in front of them. I think both of us were very embarrassed. The Civil War began to look like two monkeys fighting over a banana, but Cynthia truly forgave me only when I told Tom the truth. We became best friends again, and Cynthia and Tom became a couple. The awkwardness of our love triangle never disappeared, but we no longer wanted to pull each other's hair out. And I think it ended pretty well, considering that Brittany still doesn't know what sarcasm is, and she walks the halls of the school like an atomic bomb that could explode at any moment. That's unfortunate for those who are within its radius of impact. What would you do if your best friend became your sworn enemy? Write your answers in the comments, like the video, and share it with your friends.